It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. All right. Welcome, everybody. Podcasters, say hello and introduce yourselves, if you don't mind.
Hey, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Nick Bruecken.
And Nick is joining us today to do part 2 of our series on teams, crafting, making an awesome team. So we talked about fielding a team, finding the right people, getting them together. We talked a little bit about storming, which is kind of settling down, figuring out all the stuff. And then we want to get into norming. We got a lot more to talk about on the storming side, though. I feel like that could be like a series of 10 podcasts just in of itself.
Oh, come on. Teams always come together beautifully.
Yeah.
Instantly.
So, Nick, what is storming? Let's start there.
Oh, boy. I'm not a formal student of said, forming, storming, norming. I'm not even entirely sure how they all come together because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to kind of, I think, funnel down or I don't know, drive toward some sort of, efficiency and happiness as we build and produce some pretty cool stuff together. A lot of the storming is in my experience is really focused on kind of putting into practice what the team kind of set as their foundation for how they want to work together, right? We sometimes call those either team agreements, definitions of done, definitions of ready, things of that nature. You go in with kind of a concept, right? A plan, as we all have. And then once you start executing that plan, you realize all the things you either forgot or all the things that come together, that happen that you didn't think about, all these different variables. And so storming you kind of is the practice of kind of getting through those and figuring out how to learn from each other, how to collaborate through personalities, collaborate through different, skill sets, different technologies, whatever the case may be, and continue to sort of get to the point where you're normalizing both your practice as well as, I think, your team personality. How'd I do?
Awesome.
Wow.
I look
Are you
at
reading
it.
Wikipedia?
I look at it like, okay, you get the band together. You find these great musicians, and you get them together. You're going to be a band. Well, you haven't picked out your songs. You haven't learned those songs. You haven't really played together before. So there needs to be a lot of planning and work and practice sessions and stuff. And then the first few, it takes a while to tighten up and to really get, find your stride and to get good at it. The stronger the members are, the stronger the musicians are, the more they've done it, the quicker that process is going to be.
Maybe.
I think. And if they're the right ones.
Maybe indeed.
Yes. So it's that kind of that phase. So you've got your people together. What's next?
I'm just going to jump in on your experienced musicians concept here, and bring it back to experienced developers and other members of technical teams that I've been on. Nobody has ever done it the same. Ever, unless you've been on the exact same team at the exact same time for the entire time. It always is like, oh, over here, they do this thing a little different. Over there, there's always the basic concept of a band, but whether it's Journey or Rush or any other old 70s, 80s bands I can think of off the top of my head, they're going to do it a little different.
I was going to ask, what kind of band are we? Are we a 4-piece? Are we an orchestra with a conductor? Are we just musicians playing for Billy Joel? And, what are we dealing with?
4 lead singer / lead guitar players.
4 to 6.
4 lead singers, no drummers, and a cellist.
It's a
just
front end
for the
project.
heck of it.
No.
Sounds like Jethro Tull. A flute for no reason.
A
Or
flute
piccolo.
for no reason.
Yeah.
Great reasons.
Well, if you learn the flute, you're going to play the flute.
I saw them live. Jethro Tull.
They're
All
still
right.
touring, I think.
Are they really?
As of a
I saw
couple
them in
years
like
ago.
96, 97. Anyway,
Yeah.
Hey, Aqualung.
yeah, he couldn't hit his notes. He was frustrated. It was a weird experience. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know, Kyle. You get the band together. You're feeling each other out. You're figuring out kind of what's working and more importantly, what isn't. What requires maybe some intervention from outside or supportive resources, be it a producer or scrum master or manager or something like that, and um, continue to play and practice and figure out what's good enough and what's working, and then try to repeat that.
What's the easiest thing to fix, sort of as from a coaching standpoint?
Ooh,
Somebody that's
great
just
question.
not getting it. What'd you say,
Ooh,
Chad?
I said that was a good question, Peter.
that is a
Oh,
good
okay.
question. Yeah, because you have a lot of levers there, right? I mean, I've been at places where if somebody's not getting it, they just want to replace them right away. I come from the school of, well, this is a person with some skills that we like. How do we maybe try to pull them out and maybe meet them where they are, and through that they grow with us as well. So I don't know if there's anything really easy to fix.
Like bad fit. When you see obvious bad fit, like, is that okay? Is there something else that person can do? Is there a different role, or are they just not going to work out? Um,
Well, I
I don't
think
know how you tell
yeah.
that right away.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is no matter what, I'm always trying to take at it from the perspective of what's best for the team, not necessarily
Right.
the individual. And based on that, there can be a lot of easy fixes and difficult fixes. I mean, to your point, sometimes it's fit, and it's just, you can do that. Sometimes it's, interest and skill level, or like you might have a sort of disgruntled person who's kind of bored and wants to get into something else, and an opportunity presents itself in your project or in your sprint, and you know what, that's an opportunity to give them that challenge that they were looking for, and through that their engagement level increases, their participation increases, the rest of the team's responding, and that's an easy fix.
That's true.
So it really, to me, just kind of depends. And the other thing is when you start to get it comfortable with the easy fixing is removing someone, that there is, I think, a fallout to that with everybody else. There's always somebody looking over their shoulder then, and I really do value trying to avoid that as much as possible. At the same time, one of the most important things, I think we said this before, is knowing that sometimes fit it isn't good, and it's not good for the person nor the team, and that does have to happen sometimes.
And it doesn't mean that the person is wrong. They're just wrong for that team,
Yep.
right? There's certainly been other places where I've been where the person coming to the team was just not a good fit, but
Mhm.
they moved over to another team, and they were a rock star, right? Like they were like happy. Everybody was dealing with it well, and they got along great. So, it doesn't always mean like throw them to the curb or anything like that.
Well,
It
after a
might.
team is formed, like we have, say we're at a start of a project. You've got a team, you've got it formed. Whether you picked it, whether it was assigned to you, you've got a few sprints there to figure out all of these storming questions, right? Interpersonal conflicts. Hopefully, there's none. I don't have a ton of experience with those. Um, and then and also as far as the tech stack goes, right? Like working with actual developers and figuring out where they fit. Like I care more about making sure everybody that's writing code, that's doing development, is interested in what's in front of them. Be it, a back end guy that wants to do front end work, a front end guy that wants to do back end work, somebody that wants to do integrations. Like I try to figure out where those fits are and get folks in the right area as much as we can, right? Like, okay, we've got an integration engineer, right? Like that's that guy's focus. He loves doing it. Or find out like what are the parts that nobody likes to do, right? Maybe nobody loves to do the integrations. Everybody wants to be a React developer. I can't imagine that, but
Wish they would. We can always use them.
we could, yes, yeah, it's worth
Some
their weight
projects
in
would be easier, right?
copper, yeah. But that's what I try to figure out in the storming phase is where are folks' interest in, right? Like what part of the tech stack do you want to be a part of? What part of this tech stack are you not super comfortable with, but would like to learn a little bit more, right? Like,
Are willing to learn, right?
Yeah, right. Like maybe not everybody's a full stack developer. Maybe somebody's just we got a backend Java guy that never wants to learn React. That's me. So maybe he's happy just doing integrations, Java, backend stuff, service layer stuff, all of that other stuff. We need DevOps, right? Like who's the guy that's going to set up our chef cookbooks and our salt stacks or whatever the heck you kids come up with these days that does what a shell script could have done easily 20 years ago. That's where I focus on in the storming phase. I don't know, Peter, what have you done? You live in a different technology ecosystem than I do, and I would imagine it's similar enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I've worked on lots of different sized teams too, where you come together and some people are SQL experts, even though they're not DBAs, but they are developers that really like to write SQL or work with that end of things versus front end folks, and those are finding somebody that loves CSS. It's not necessarily somebody that loves CSS but isn't a React person or something like that, right? If you've got just a little bit of something to do front end wise but not a full, hey, let's bring in a giant JavaScript framework and learn that and go with that for our tiny little app for this internal 3-person team that we're writing it for.
Sometimes the easy solution presents a difficult problem. So you have somebody interested, say, in CSS, and so the easy answer is, oh, well, give them the work that's associated with CSS. And then you find out maybe they're not very good at it, and there's a drag on the project, and then there's an impact to everything, and then what do you do? That often happens in the storming phase where you're feeling people out for what they say their professional acumen is, but you're also getting a sense of their personal acumen, like who they are and their personal development as well as like their professional development, and you're trying to kind of juggle a few things, and you have to take some chances, and at the same time you also have to learn from them and pivot, and keeping in mind, of course, the bigger picture, which is how it's affecting the entire team, both inside and from an outside in, how others
and
are perceiving
sort
the
of
team
to
too.
run with the orchestra story. You're trying to figure out which chair the person sits in. Are they a better violin player than the other person that sits ahead of them? Because in orchestras, the seating arrangement is by expertise rather than by height or anything else, right?
I never rank people, Peter. Stop ranking people. Yeah.
There's a lot of factors like, how resilient is that team? How much can they carry? Like how many people, like if you've got one person that's in a key role that has to do that work, if they can't do it, then you're in trouble. I've had that happen where it's like, we need this skill set, and this person has half of that skill set.
Right.
But that's the person we got.
But a half is better than zero.
Half is better than zero, and then.
But it is not equal to one.
We're focusing a lot on the teams or these individuals' contributions and outputs, right? The skill level and the code and stuff. But how is that impacting the team? How is the team coming to their support? And how is the team aiding them? And how are they aiding each other? And what are you doing to kind of also build that up so that when you do have a gap where maybe somebody's not great at it but interested, that you give them that cover to say, well, cool, go run with it and work with these people to help you out, or how can we help kind of block and tackle for you so you're not going at it alone and feeling like you are, the entire team's success or failure is riding on you. Like how do we continue to develop that sense of like a team attitude and perspective of winning and losing together, rather than I have my thing, I'm doing my thing, so therefore my team must be doing well because I'm doing this thing.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
it's trying to, you know, you also have to start, you know, forming and storming and then norming the whole concept of if you're doing well, but the team continues to miss its goals, are we doing well?
No.
Right. And how do you continue to kind of foster those things as well within all these examples that we're talking about?
But Nick, I did my part. I'm just saying.
Right.
Well, and to go back to the rock band thing, if you have 5 guitar soloists soloing all at the same time, what song are they playing?
While my guitar gently weeps. I mean, we watched
Hey,
that at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame like 7 years ago. It went well.
but they didn't all play at the same time. Some of them were playing some rhythm guitar in the background, right? You know, when Prince stepped up,
Well,
it wasn't like 5 other people shoved him aside and took their turns, right?
well, maybe this song called for that, but maybe a different way to look at it is, you know, drummer killing it, totally nailing it. Guitarist nailing it. Singer on point. Bassist not even on the floor. We don't even know where the bass is, and so it's sounding a little trebly. We don't know what's going on. Nobody has cared to look. Do we have a bassist
He's
there?
still at the snack table.
Right? Did anybody notice that wasn't happening? Because clearly it's not. You know, something's off. That's more, I think, like what I guess what I'm talking about is something's missing, therefore the whole is definitely suffering because of it.
So, Nick, for your experience, is it mostly a skill set gap, or is it more often a personality problem or team cohesion problem rather than a skill set problem?
I usually find that it's team cohesion that is the hardest thing to develop and maintain.
So that's the
think
hard coaching.
I think so.
I want to ask for a hard example, but I don't think we can do that. Like an actual concrete example of what that problem is. Yeah.
Well, you
I
know,
think it goes.
sometimes you can wrap it up in terms of, oh, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
I think it goes back to our example where I'm doing my part. I did all my stuff. Why do you think that we're not succeeding as a team? I, me, my, all of those words are great, but they have nothing to do with team.
Yeah, and I think we get into some of my experience has been in that vein, that same vein. It's not necessarily that these people, that the team member is being selfish. It's that they're only looking at instruction. They're not actually thinking about why or the context of not just the work item that they're on, but also how come we're saying all this stuff about being a team? Why are we working in, you know, a lot of times I see things like, oh, we're doing Scrum, we're agile. Well, no, agile is like a mindset approach to something that you can use Scrum to kind of, you know, I guess break it into a format that at least has some start and stops as a way to kind of check in
And write a book.
and sure and continue to write books and but at the end of the day the spirit of why we're doing it this way and growing that spirit of team is the same thing. Like we have to get comfortable and there is a vulnerability that has to take hold of, you know, being okay asking for help, being okay knowing that if you're not saying what the problem is, we aren't going to find the solution, right? And therefore we're going to suffer some way, whether we find out in, you know, production when somebody finds it, or, you know, when somebody else finds it on their own and then is like, why didn't you say something? So you know, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people are missing the forest for the trees, right? And you have to start to develop that, but it requires people getting out of their themselves. And I think right now, especially working remote, that's been more challenging than ever because we're always in ourselves, right? We're always alone. When you have a free moment, you're not looking around for somebody to go take a walk with or have a coffee with. Nobody's clicking a Teams meeting, be like, hey, you want to chat for 10 minutes? I've been on Teams all day, right? And so
It's more
it's
challenging, that's for
harder.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you saying
yeah.
that these Microsoft Teams happy hours aren't really going well anymore, like they were 2 years ago?
I wouldn't say they're not going well. They're just maybe not as impactful. How about
There
that?
you go. Yeah.
They have their own
So-
impact though, because of course, when you're coming from I don't see anybody to at least I could virtually see somebody, that's an improvement. But when
So
you're
if
trying to
you're,
build a team,
yeah, if you're in a band, you're all playing together. Like there's an event, you're on stage, or wherever you're playing in concert with one another. You're playing as a group. You're acting as a team, as a single unit. But on a project, like, you might just be getting a list of things to do, and then you go do them, and then you come back and
well,
turn in your work and do more. Like what is the kind of the difference there if like you have somebody that is just getting work done and they have to go off and do it on their own? Like how are they operating as a team member?
well, as a band, are you practicing together leading up to that performance, or did you all just show up and decide right then and there? What I was practicing, I assume, is what you were practicing. I think there's a lot of stuff happening that isn't on stage that leads to a better product on stage. And I think what I would be looking for with a team is the same thing, where I don't need to call everybody together on stage to make sure we're talking to each other, that those things are happening behind the scenes on a regular basis without a bunch of babysitting, and that those conversations are doing a lot toward not just creating a better product, whether it's a concert or a software, that we're building.
Hopefully software.
Right, but also better team structures too, because you're starting to establish relationships, commonalities. You're finding things about how people tick. You're learning things about what to avoid, right? Triggers and things of that nature, um, and that all contributes, But then you can fall in love with, maybe you like really working with one person and you ignore the other five, and then you got a different problem, right? Where that's the click issue, where you got to try to figure out how to incorporate people, but at the same time, you can't just say sit at the same lunch table and expect them to be friends. You got to learn about the problem too, and then start to figure out what you want to do about it. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that's all right. So, what's the best way to kind of like, I'm thinking of like a retro, and that's sort of a place for the whole team to come together and not airing of grievances level of things, but sort of talking about things to do better, things that you're doing well. Is that enough? Is it more, are you going to have to go to individuals and say, look, that it's great that you built this window in the floor, but that's not really what we're here for. We're here to put windows in walls and floors on floors, that kind of thing.
I'm going to fall
look how
back on
nice
that
it
awareness.
is.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to look down and think you're falling. I'm going to go back to awareness, because a retro is nice, but if you're not actually referencing what was agreed upon, and nobody is choosing to improve in any one of those things, or everybody's looking for the one person to actually do it, otherwise it's not going to happen, then did we have a retro, right? If you
I've been to a few silent retros that were just horrible,
well,
right?
but yeah, I mean, those are tough too. But even the ones where everybody's talking, but afterwards we said these are the 2 or 3 things we're going to do, and nobody takes it up, then
Right.
it never happens.
Yeah.
And so, what improvement is actually happening? So, in my role, I definitely try to sprinkle reminders of what we agreed upon. And in my own failure, sometimes I don't and I forget, but part of my retros, I make sure we look at what was the last retro, what we agree to do, are we doing it, and start there, because we thought it was important 2 weeks ago. Do we still? And
Right.
just kind of, it does two things. One, it I think reaffirms what we talked about, and repetition sometimes, right? You say the same thing enough, it becomes the truth. And two, you can compare it to what your either grievances or successes you want to talk about now are, because maybe after 2 more weeks that thing became such a big deal, it's even more important, and people are going to take it seriously.
So you gather the people together, you get them all at the same lunch table, but they have to actually team up. They have to come together. Like you can't just draw a circle around them and say you're a team. Like they have to connect and communicate with each other and kind of figure it out, on their own, partly. you can't, like, unless you're the military and you're going to break people down to nothing and then give them like instructions for everything they do. No, it has to kind of be a self-forming team and has some self-storming involved. It can't just be like the outside person. They have to figure it out together. Like, how do you work together? How do you play together? Because it's like, I have people that will spend hours trying to figure something out. And it's like,
Days.
That's like, where facilitation can come into handy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, based on, okay, this group is our back end development team and we have a back end problem. So at least there's something we can surround ourselves with and anchor ourselves to. Sometimes it's everybody's looking at the other person to start it off, and you need somebody to help with that. I certainly have no problem falling on my face in front of people to make them feel comfortable, as well as maybe feeling like, oh, I guess I could volunteer what I think here because it's clearly more intelligent than that guy, But if I'm not around, how do you create that sense of things? And I think with anything, it's chicken or the egg. Is the first time they met each other is to solve this problem and they don't know anything else? Or have you had a chance to kind of introduce each other, learn a little bit about each other? Is there some sense of maybe not who's in charge, but who's most likely to start out? If so on and so forth. And as you're in it, if people are letting one person talk, is there somebody there who's willing to say, hey, Peter, do you have something to offer?
I do.
Something like that. Yeah.
The one thing that Nick's said that resonated is there has to be somebody sprinkling in something. There has to be an instigator. There has to be a voice. There has to be somebody that's even like aware of the fact that folks aren't talking to each other about cross-cutting concerns, right? Like, I keep grounding it in, software technology product teams, and making sure that, hey man, if there's a guy working on a React problem up here, and there's a guy working on an endpoint over here that's going to service those, like if those two guys aren't talking, you're gonna have a bad product, right? Like, and if they don't, it takes a little bit of leadership, and leadership that is contextually aware of what's actually happening across the entire stack to say, here's this guy, here's that guy. I don't want to make a caricature out of people and say like, oh, they don't like each other, so I'm going to put different people in those roles, right? Like, you'll figure out what groups work together and what groups don't, and what context matters for what role individuals are helping with on a project.
But when two people pick up a story, one is the front end, one is the back end, you naturally assume that they're going to talk to each other. And if you find out at a later point that they didn't or aren't, then you're able to go in and say, all right, the next time we pick up these two stories, after we fix this problem, let's have that communication at the start of the stories rather than the end and complaining about it.
That's where I pick up on. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Chad.
Who's going? You or me? Okay, I'll go. That's where the leadership aspect of it comes in, right? Like, you have to be contextually aware of these two people in your sprint or in your stand-ups, in your code reviews, and all of this. If you are aware of everything that's going on under the covers there, like, you should be able to tell that. You should be able to answer that question relatively quickly without having to wait for a retro or a end of sprint event, right? Any of the ceremonies,
right? It should be obvious in the stand-up that they're not communicating, but
yeah.
Well, and on that note, I think one of the things, besides awareness, which can be hard to pull yourself out of what you're doing to think about a bigger picture, somebody is probably trying to do that and provide that awareness. And if they aren't, the other thing is resonating with people. Like, if I'm going back to, we've got two guitar players in this band. They're both playing and practicing on a regular basis, but not together. You know what I mean? So I could use that today with some of my teams and just say that and make it resonate with them. Like, hey, you guys are both playing guitar at your own house, but I need you to be playing together to figure out how it sounds together as a way to resonate what it is we're looking for, to break down like whatever personality differences is going on or whatever's happening. That let's bring it back to what we're trying to do here as a group and as a team, or as a couple of people trying to contribute to the bigger thing, which is, we are trying to represent a product team or a project team. And sometimes we have to put our pettiness aside and focus on that, right? Without saying it that way, because that won't resonate. so
They'll get you
oftentimes
voted off the island, right?
yeah, it is as good as being as creative as you can to help communicate with somebody. And that's not always easy. That is a skill some people have that I am insanely envious of. And then you see it in some people who have it worse than anybody. It just isn't, it's just very like, let me hit you across the face with what my problem is here,
To be straightforward and honest with all of you all the time, even though you're cringing the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad I know where you stand. On the other hand, you're not willing to move. So what do I do here?
Right.
Like what? Yeah.
Like a little bit of flexibility also.
Yeah.
There's the benefits of a team, having resiliency and redundancy and relying on each other and just being stronger as a group than you are as an individual. I mean, you have to, operate as a team to get those benefits. If you're a group of individuals, or if you're all being held together by one person that's staying in contact with everybody, so you're really just 6 partnerships all kind of around this one person. It's like, well, if they didn't schedule it, it wouldn't happen. Like, we wouldn't talk. I've seen this a few times where like there's a key person that's kind of a catalyst, and you lose that person, and it's just this huge disruption because, they were fulfilling this role of being the glue and the communication and checking in with people and fostering that connection between one another. So a team can kind of form on its own and have those internal bonds and rely on each other. Or you draw a circle around them and call them a team. They're a group. You want to get to that point where they've self-organized and connected, and they're relying on each other, and there's a clear division of labor, clear division of roles, and they're operating well. That's the output piece. It's then you're coming up with, how do you monitor the health of the team? During that kind of that norming phase, you've shaken out the bugs, and people are talking. We've teamed up. So now it's like, how do you make sure that's staying that way?
Every band stays together forever, right? They never break up. There's never any internal strife or any interest in going solo ever, right? Is that what you're getting at, Kyle?
I think if there's an example that we could come up with.
Everything has a season. Every project has a lifespan. You don't want them to quit halfway through the tour.
Yeah. The easiest measure is obviously, are you achieving your outcomes and your, project goals and all that stuff. But usually that is not an indicator of how well the team is performing together necessarily. Sometimes that's just, and sometimes a team doesn't have to like each other to perform well together. That's not really the objective either. It is this you're trying to generate a place of mutual respect, of honesty, of trust, of assuming positive intent upon each other, because you're calling out things that represent the betterment of the project or the product, knowing that someone's going to take it personally. But if you established that we're not calling out names, we're just creating a backlog of things that we need to do, then it can go great. Nobody has to go out for beers afterwards,
But you can, Chad. Don't
you're
worry.
not,
You
you
can.
can.
Aghast. I am aghast.
You can.
Okay. I will always come back to working software is the primary measure of progress. I feel like that's written down somewhere. So as we're
Is that the Scrum guide? No way.
Yeah.
No. It was, but how do you know that you have working software? You've got a well-formed team and you've got metrics around that. Like to answer Kyle's question, I mean, we have an infinite amount of metrics right now these days to measure the progress of a product team, right? Like we can say, here's in a given sprint, here's a velocity to each developer. Here's how well we estimate. We've got metrics around estimation. We've got metrics around defects that, we have to go back and work towards. And we can all agree on, code coverage and all these insane amount of details that matter to some people. But it still comes back to working software is the primary measure of progress on a software team. And it would be great if also at the same time, everybody talked and liked each other.
You'll get a lot more done that way. That's for sure. I think
so.
I mean,
that's,
having a team that's just full of animosity towards each other might get something done in the case of fighting a fire, but once that fire's out, they're all going to hate each other still. And
the common enemy, brings people together, but
But it doesn't last for a long time, right? You can't fight fires 24/7, 365, right? That gets pretty old too, and you're going to start separating to get away from the fire if that's all that's happening in that team.
Well, I think there's always, as you're monitoring things and you're like, okay, I think we could be doing better. Like we're things are sliding, things are dropping, or the quality or whatever. Like there's that. How well is this really turning out how we wanted it to be, or is it like what do you do in that case where we're doing it, we're just not doing it great. We're not like this. I feel like this could be better. We've done this on other projects and it's really gone better than this. How do you fine tune it?
Okay. Sometimes we're looking for trouble where there isn't any. And
oh, thank God. God bless you, Nick.
And whenever I'm thinking about that question, because it does pop in my head, I usually ask myself first, well, what are we doing well? And is this me? So I don't know. That was my first thought.
Well, I that's just it. Like your own self-critique. You might be doing something you're not happy with, but the customer loves it, and everybody and actually it is not bad. It's pretty good. And it's definitely going to work. But cause I think I could have done, well, if only we did this, and you can get a little caught up in perfectionism. So I think, you're right. Is this really a problem? Is it just my perception? What is the owner think of it? What is the stakeholders? How do you define that? How do you know when you're really just in your own head and there's really not a problem? You see something at first glance, like a couple people are arguing about something and you're like, well, that's a problem. They don't get along. This is bad for the team. And it's like, well, no, they had a short disagreement about one little thing and it didn't really matter, and you were just walking by and overreacted to it.
Didn't come to blows this time.
Yeah. So basically, how do you not micromanage?
Chad, you seem like you wanted to say something here.
No, I mean, I do. I don't necessarily micromanage. I don't write every line of code, but as if you're in a leadership role on a team and you don't have the context that each team member has, you're not going to be all that successful, right? You should be able to define a little bit of each person's context, right? And I think that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit, is being able to identify, all right, where's this guy coming from? Where's this guy coming from? And how am I going to be able to, as a leader, make this work?
Right.
I think what you're referencing to, Kyle, is some of those, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, variables that come in that are like you bring things from home into the office, or you bring your own personality traits and start applying them on things that were otherwise going well. And that can happen on every level. So the argument you witness might be actually not so much about the technical problem in question as much as there's something else going on at home and this person's just bringing it to the job. And those are important because they can impact and kill progress, both as a team forming and, you know, norming and all that stuff, but also just like relationships and you know, it can create those little mini traumas, if you will, that can require some time to kind of resolve. So
It's
I
still
don't know.
humans doing it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so I think my answer before is this me? You know, I don't know, right? Like all the greatest movies and greatest songs and greatest pieces of art, I don't know that the artist necessarily went out thinking this is going to be the best and, you know, everybody's going to love it. Usually everybody's surprised by it. And I think with software, it's not that much different, where you built something that maybe it didn't come to your vision, but by golly, it is beloved by its user community, and you're just not comfortable with that. Some of that is your own personality, you know, affliction, and some of it is I don't know. Sometimes it is good enough, even if you think it could be better.
You spent the previous night watching a basketball game where your home team gave up two 26-point leads in one of the few playoff games that they've been in. And you come into a meeting the next morning a little salty. Hey, maybe be aware that you've got a basketball fan on your team, and his team has been miraculously horrible and just outdid every expectation that you had of how poorly they can perform in a game. And
I think that's because they forgot which state they live in and how the teams from that state are miraculously capable of pulling defeat from the jaws of success.
Well, I think that awareness of, you know, you've got team members and the health of each member of the team, which is directly going to affect their ability to perform, like kind of staying in tune with that. Because sometimes all it takes is just knowing that that person's team lost and they're probably going to be salty, and just knowing to give them space. So
rub it in.
The ability to know each other pretty well and kind of know what's going on. I've had projects where like people had serious stuff going on outside of work, and it was really bad for the project.
Did not help.
No, but we had to adjust, and we got through it. But it was, you know, a lot of people carrying extra stuff.
But that can also lead to really strong teams.
Yeah.
Being formed, right, and really strong bonds, and, you know, the old adage of, you know, foxholes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that kind of team personality can wear you out, right? All of a sudden, if you've done it once where you bound together and overworked yourselves to cover for somebody who's going through a tough time, if all of a sudden that becomes the norm, that's just not sustainable. And even though your team bonds probably hold on even as the team dissipates because people are not able to personally handle it, you will always have each other, but you're no longer working together. So
I was going to say that kind of brings us right to our next topic, right? Or kind of blends in once your team's going great, right? Everything's running great. And then all of a sudden you look at the report and your velocity's dropped for some reason, right? And okay, whoops. Now what? Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's because so and so had that problem, and we'll make that up in the end,
Yeah.
or we need to be aware of that and try to get a couple points ahead for the next few
So and
weeks.
so has bought a junker and has had car trouble for 2 weeks, has missed 3 meetings. So
It was the best deal ever.
can somebody buy them a car? Like, what can we do?
Let's all chip in $20 and get that thing fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
There's
think having like struggles, there's like a crucible you go through and you come out stronger. Like it takes a hammer and an anvil, and it takes that storming to get stronger. And sometimes through adversity you get stronger. If it doesn't kill you, if it doesn't
Yeah.
wreck the team.
sometimes necessity can be quite motivating, I mean, it can really challenge a person in a way that they needed, and or a team in a way that they needed, because they now have even though we were supposed to build this product, there was never really this sense of urgency. And all of a sudden this sense of urgency kicks in and you realize you have a lot of people who are motivated by that. And you realize that's how the best way to work together isn't necessarily working 60 hours a week, but maybe it's saying, I need this by Thursday,
Yeah.
or, something else, right? I mean, everybody's motivated differently. And sometimes that can occur.
I'm not
But I
doing
think
it
to your
till the
point,
last minute, like ever.
yeah.
So you need to change when the last minute is.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's usually a challenge with, like, when you're doing like Scrum and you have these 2-week sprints and everybody feels like they have until day 10 to finish, and instead, when you're supposed to be thinking about how much value can I contribute in that 2-week period, conceptually it's different, especially when we grow up in a society who's based on like deadlines. It can be really hard to kind of pull yourself out and be like, but if I got this done early, what's my reward is more things. But if my mentality is I'm actually like building this big Lego set and I just need to finish this little thing, and by the end I'm going to have this awesome toy that's going to be super fun to play with, you'll want to get it done faster, but most people aren't thinking about the toy all the time. They're just thinking about their little instruction guide. And so how do you do that? And then once you start forming a team that can do that, what are the things that come in, whether it's a velocity thing, or we had some sort of tragic event, or somebody decided we're going to add to the team. Oh, this team's performing so well, let's put more people on it.
Go even faster, get done even sooner.
Right. What happens then? So there's a lot of things that can derail a normed and performing team.
Right. And take you right back into the beginning.
And it's so simple, so easy to do.
Doing it next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I do feel like all of us have been through that, where we were just, man, the sun was shining, the day was beautiful,
Yeah.
everything was going along, the music was playing, my favorite song on the radio, and then we hit a tree, and all that came to a crashing halt.
Check engine light started blaring.
Yeah.
Then the internet dropped and my package was lost.
Yes.
And our license got like just disappeared for something, and all the workflows crashed. Cause that's my Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Like that, it happens. Everything was going so well until something went horribly wrong.
Absolutely.
Parting thoughts, Chad? You're a team lead right now.
Yeah, it's a quote from Michael Scott, who quoted somebody else, but it was called Michael Scott. I don't think it was Michael Scott, but it was from The Office. Somebody said, to your point, Kyle, you never really realize that you're in the best of times, right? You only realize once they're over.
No doubt.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
And true.
Grass is always greener until you get there, right?
Yeah.
All right. So our third installment will be going through the best of times, performing,
trying to maintain them.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you. I think with that, we should just say goodbye and talk to you guys next week.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.